Welcome to Cage Minds Uncensored. I'm Micah Frankel. A shout out to Mac 10, Edwin Ruiz, the I Got Your Back anti-bullying campaign. Give Edwin a follow. Hit the like button when you go to Facebook and check out Mac 10. That's MMACK10. A great supporter of combat sports athletes across the nation. Great supporter of mine. Love all my hats. Love my camouflage hoodie like you would not believe. Even though it's summertime, I still can't wait to put it back on when it's cold. Mac 10, check them out. Today we have a lot to talk about. The Pro Fighters League debuted. Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series is coming back. There was LFA. There was UFC. There are weight cutting issues that are plaguing the MMA industry. Can they ever be solved? Well, possibly. If you want them to be. Let's start with weight cutting. First off, Dana White wants to do away with the early weigh-ins. Now let's establish what the early weigh-ins were for. The early weigh-ins were so that fighters weren't told you have to be on weight this moment. You were to think about it as if you had to be on weight that early moment. And if you needed that 2 extra hours, voila, you already have it with a 2-hour window. Now, for some ridiculous, preposterous reason that I didn't agree with in the first place, they also added in a little asterisk that said, and if you're in a title fight and you miss weight, you still can get that allotted old school 2 extra hours, even if you do come in at the tail end of the window. I thought the window was it. You keep them in that initial 2-hour window, and that's brilliant. You give them 2 hours. You're not forcing them. What was the big deal about moving it from the evening to the morning? It was to benefit the fighters. You're like, how does making them cut weight, sleep, cut weight, rush to a weigh-in benefit them? It wasn't in the weight cutting process. It was in the rehydration process. It was saying instead of giving a fighter 24 hours from when they're on that scale to when they have to be in that cage, you're giving them 30 hours, hypothetically then giving the fighter more time to replenish their body. But really what that did was enable weight cutting to a worse situation that we've seen here in 2018. Remember, heading into UFC 225, we're talking about 7-1 were fighters that missed weight and still competed in the UFC. 7 wins, 1 loss. It wasn't looking like missing weight was being that detrimental as far as performance went the next night. Well, 1 championship, and just throw them out there right away. In Asia, cutting edge promotion. Vice President Rich Franklin, Matt Hume, AMC Pancreations, the head trainer for Demetrius Johnson. He's involved with the promotion. Their promotion has fighters fight at their walking around weight. Now, obviously, I'm sure people diet. They get into the best physical and best cardiovascular shape they possibly could. But they do urine, gravity, weight checks, and dehydration checks throughout the entire fight week. You do have steps set up in their contracts, of punishments for being off weight, for trying to dehydrate yourself. 1 championship trying to cut the sauna out. Now, my own personal page, I reshared both articles by MMA Mania, and I plan to do so again here on the Cage Minds Combat Sports News Facebook page. But it looks like Asia's top promotion has got out in front of this epidemic, having fighters fight at their walk-around weights, constantly checking them to make sure that they're not dehydrated, that they're in a peak physical condition, and that they're ready to go to battle. That makes a lot more logical sense to me than dehydrating yourself down to fit into a weight class to then go compete against another top caliber martial artist. This makes so much more sense. 1 championship has challenged the UFC. The UFC, I guess, didn't really understand it or hear it, but they've been challenged to take on these same measures. So have Bellator. I can only implore both companies to do the same, to follow one championship, to use these dehydration checks, to keep fighters in a more natural weight class. There's never more of a ridiculous statement than when you see a guy who's cutting 25, 30, possibly 40 pounds be called, he's a natural middleweight. That guy might be more of a natural bantamweight. Why would we persecute the fighter that is cutting less weight? I would actually commend them for being so brave than the guy that's saying, I need this advantage so detrimentally. I have got to necessitize this size advantage to the point where dehydrating yourself to fighting death, to vision loss, to these emotional outbursts, looking like she was dying from Cyborg, to the Darren Till losing his eyesight, to Daniel Cormier trying to push the towel down and use different little tricks to beat the system and make weight. Making weight has been referred to as the first fight. One championship has eliminated that first fight from the fighter's fight week schedule, and I believe that's a brilliant move. Rich Franklin, in the article on MMA Mania, has talked about how he felt the performances and the competition that night was elevated by the energy that the fighters naturally had from not having cut weight. Why is all this weight cutting back in the news? Well, obviously, you know why it's back in the news. It's back in the news because Yoel Romero missed weight for UFC 225. And first off, he missed weight in that 2-hour window. Took the last little bit he could and came in at 186. Now, for my opinion, that's where it would end. But he was then allowed to try to attempt more weight. Now, let's mind you, this fight was set up 10 weeks ago. Romero already missed weight in Australia against Rockhold, so he knew it was even that much more of an importance to be on weight, to make weight. You cannot miss weight for 2 consecutive title fights as the challenger and expect to remain in the division or in the title conversation. Robert Whittaker had been adamant that if Romero didn't make weight, he wasn't going to fight him. Romero comes in at 186. The tail end of the scale of what would have been passable had this been a non-title fight. But lo and behold, there is that 2-hour extension. So Romero is given 2 more hours, but with commission supervision, who was allowed to cancel his weight cut at any time. For no reason at all, according to Romero, the commission took that option, used that option, and an hour into the 2 hours, stopped the weight cut, made Yoel go back and weigh in, and Romero is 185.2. The fight is no longer a title fight. The title fight is off. Romero has missed weight. The UFC, other people start to blame the commission for stopping the weight cut. Darren Till's corner people did not stop his weight cut when he was blind. Cyborg was in tears with her team there sympathizing but pushing their fighter through it. The commission in Chicago made the absolute right call. How can I say that? Not from the one, but from the 2 people and the video that shows Yoel Romero having to be helped after being on the scale. There is no way that an athlete should be expected to perform the day they are carried out of a room and having to be carried off that scale, basically. Yoel Romero was in a bad place. We'd like to, like one championship is doing, get to the point where you say, this man's a 185-pound champion. That means he basically weighs 185 pounds. I mean, Robert Whittaker showed up fight week at 189 pounds, reportedly. Dedication, determination, and quite possibly the size of a true 185-pound fighter. Maybe slightly bigger if we're talking about fully naturally walking around, but only slightly dieting down. Robert Whittaker, 189. Yoel Romero, we're still talking about the scale. We ain't even talking about the fight. We are still talking about his inability on the scale. Why does that get to take such prevalence? The people that want to be mad at the commission, you blow my mind. You want to blame corners, blame handlers, blame the commission when they don't step in. But then we also want to blame them when they do step in. Now, in New York, it is a different circumstance when they cut off Max Holloway's weight cut before he even gets on the scale. But we don't know how he was looking. And it's another thing to do it without a physician. But Romero already missed weight and then had to be carried out. You could obviously say that the Chicago, the Illinois Commission made the right call in that moment. So we walk away from there. And right now, the fight is obviously in limbo because Whittaker had been steadfast that Romero needed to make weight. Gotta agree with him 100%. You are the champion. This is to be your first title defense. You deserve a challenger. And obviously, you come into this matchup up 1-0. Whittaker had already beat Romero a year ago. A highly contested fight. Great fight. You have the advantage. Romero has cost himself the title already with his inability to manage the scale. There is a no-win situation for Robert Whittaker if the UFC really cared about their fighters and cared about their champions. If they really did, you tell the champ, this is the second time this guy's done it. We're not going to make you fight him. We're not going to make you go 5 rounds with him. If you want to do a 3-round fight, we'll do it. You're still getting your money. But then again, if the UFC had any sense, they'd just say, we're not giving Romero this opportunity. Here's your money, Whittaker. But the UFC doesn't have the money to not make the fighters fight. Remember, the UFC punishes the guy that makes weight because they forcibly and they try to leverage the fighter that did make weight into accepting the bout with the disrespectful fighter because they're not obligated to pay you, I guess, in the contracts until you fight, even though there's show money and win money. It's not until you show up, but weighing in is so prevalent. That's what the UFC did. And this brings up a great point. Conor McGregor has leverage, incredible leverage. He has raised the bar, the financial potential to earn an MMA with that $10 million payday with Diaz. He elevated the game in that level. Now, who can elevate it in a negotiation level? Because obviously the financial bar is raised. But who can elevate it in clauses where, well, if I'm going to get $500,000 flat out, 150 is guaranteed if my opponent misses weight. When do we get a clause that if we're going to stay with the archaic weigh-in system, where I wish we just went to the natural walk-around weight, more what One Championship was doing, people can make weight there, but if we're going to continue with this weight-cutting system, when does somebody leverage into the contracts? If my opponent misses weight, I get this much anyway, because that will force the UFC to change. If it financially affects the company, then they will change their tune. They will change their manner of how they attack this problem. But right now, they leverage the fighters into, he missed weight, you need to take the fighter, you're not getting paid, even though you did what you have to do. Well, we'll compensate you financially. But already, so much of this is about size, reach, and the poor person that has to take on somebody that is massive. A Yoel Romero, who I'm pretty sure has to come past. I'm talking about he passes 205 in his weight cut, obviously. A Darren Till, who's talked all buoyantly about being 215, obviously should be a 185er, having to pass down 2 different weight classes. When people are so desperate for that advantage, this is why you worry about taking a fight with the guy that missed weight. How much is he going to inflate up to? And especially with the early weigh-ins, you worry. Because now you're giving that guy not just 24 hours, but 30 hours. That was the double-edged sword. Now, when do we negotiate. I mean, I'm still waiting for the negotiating part to come into play where we can leverage in no more of this show and win money. Because in the NFL, you are paid to play football. NBA paid to play basketball, MLB paid to play a baseball game. Fighters paid to fight. You shouldn't get more or less whether you win or you lose. I understand some old, archaic, Neanderthalic, outdated theory that you'll fight harder if there's a win bonus. But why hasn't the sport, as it's leveled up in the years, came from the status of small, dark clubs up to we just had a show in the United Center, shows in Madison Square Garden, the upper echelon of entertainment. These guys should be paid to fight, flat out. That would make the most sense in the sports world, I believe. But again, we're talking about weight cutting, and I'll get back to that. The weight cutting screwed Yoel Romero out of his opportunity because he couldn't do it properly. He screwed himself. Everybody that wants to get mad about the fight, Yoel Romero did himself no favors for 10 weeks before the fight, not being able to make 185 pounds. We get to fight night. Why is this fight happening? The UFC is forcing Robert Whittaker again to compete. That was my earlier point. The negotiations have to change because Whittaker should not be fighting this fight. What does he gain from it? You beat Romero, you're up 2-0. You never have to deal with Yoel Romero again. Wait, Yoel Romero just missed weight for 2 main event pay-per-view title fights. He cannot be trusted with a card. He cannot be put into these rankings because he's not making the weight class. Yoel Romero will need to move up to light heavyweight. So why are we going to have a guy that's moving up to light heavyweight who can't make the weight take on the champion who can make the weight? That all that you have happen is the worst possible. Romero knocks out Whittaker. It's 1-1. Everybody's screaming that Romero should be the champion, but he didn't make weight. He can't make weight, obviously. Why was this a good move for the UFC to proceed to force Robert Whittaker to fight Yoel Romero? Oh, because we already sold tickets saying they were going to. Because we've already sold pay-per-view saying we're going to. Because that would affect our bottom line if we somehow had to come up with a refund. I mean, we're not a sports league. We are a business here. We are all about the business. And we're not even the business of promoting our fighters in the best form because you're hanging your champion out to dry. It's all on you. Take the fight or don't take the fight, but we will hang you out to dry because if you really wanted to fight, you would fight. And we've all heard that tune from Dana White before. So Robert Whittaker fights. And Robert Whittaker, it turns out, but we don't know this, breaks his right hand in the first round. He jabs and tears apart the Yoel Romero left leg with those side kicks for the first 2 rounds. Yoel Romero explodes with a big right hand in the 3rd round, nearly finishes Whittaker. Whittaker digs down deep, is able to survive. In the 4th round, you again had a very stagnant, inactive Yoel Romero, who, that is his MO. He does nothing. He does nothing and then explodes. So with that kind of offensive output, with that kind of fight mentality, with that kind of psychology with your fights, it's very hard to win a decision, a long drawn out fight where each little kick, each little touch, each strike matters more and more as each round goes on. It's becoming a marathon as Yoel Romero is sprinting. And the first round went by, the second round went by. He turned it up finally at a point in the 3rd round, almost got the finish. Again, almost lethargically letting the 4th round pass by until he catches Whittaker. Whittaker does the chicken leg dance, but is able to stay on his feet. Whittaker won the striking totals for that round, and being able to stay on his feet won him that round in the eyes of the judges and honestly in the eyes of the 5 people that I was watching the fight with. The 5th round, again, a stagnant, not doing nothing, Romero letting time pass by, finally explodes, nearly finishes Whittaker, believes he's done enough. A lot of people feel that the 5th round is very controversial, that it should have been a 10-8 round. I thought it was a 10-9 round. I've only watched it once, the fight in its entirety. I would need to go back and rescore it. There is an argument to be made, obviously, because so many people are making it, that could it have been scored a 10-8 5th round. I guess it could have been. A lot of people are saying, but it wasn't. The fight was not stopped in the 5th round. The fight was not stopped in the 3rd round. Just like the doctor did not come in the 2nd round when it looked like Romero's eye was on the verge of being closed. Dan Miragliotta did not stop the fight to bring in the referee. Just like Dan Miragliotta did not step in when there were cage grabs from both parties, like he did not step in when Yoel Romero landed 2 elbows, definitely to the back of the head of Robert Whittaker in that 5th round when he had him hurt. Definitely heard there were warnings, but did not step in and take a point, did not break the action. He let the fight play out. The judges, I felt, scored it accordingly. Robert Whittaker takes the split decision. A unanimously controversial fight. Controversial for so many reasons now, but you get it. 3 rounds to 2, Whittaker wins on 2 judges' scorecards. 3 rounds to 2, Yoel Romero on the other judges' scorecard. A lot of people are upset about this fight. Could you have scored that 4th round for Romero? Obviously, one judge did. There's been a lot of controversial, bad decisions in MMA. Do I call this a bad one? No. Do I call this a split decision in an ultra-close fight? Yes, I do. But it probably worked out for the UFC the best it could. Because even though you now have a lot of people calling for a trilogy, because Romero almost finished Whittaker. He almost finished him. But he almost finished him in the first fight. And again, the judge's decision said that Robert Whittaker wins. So when we look at the scoreboard, the big scoreboard, the record books, it is 2-0 Robert Whittaker. He should be past Yoel Romero, who is 0-2 against Robert Whittaker and is 0-2 in his last 2 fights against the scale. Being on that 4-fight losing streak like that, I don't understand how there could be such an adamant outcry for Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker 3. It's 2-0. What do? We book it for a 3rd time. Romero misses weight again, but he wins. It's a no-win situation for Robert Whittaker at this moment in a lot of people's eyes. He won. He got his hand raised. He was put in a bad position by the company. Never should have been in that fight because Dana White was standing aside Bruce Buffer after the fight while the judges' scorecards are being read, almost as if there was some surprise where the belt was going to go. It was going to be around Robert Whittaker's waist. It was already announced the day before. Yoel Romero had already missed weight. Yoel Romero can proclaim from a hospital bed, I am the champion. But he can never say that he's the middleweight champion because he can never weigh 185 pounds without being medically dehydrated, without being on the brink of death. It's time for Yoel Romero to move up. It's time for a new line of thought in MMA. It's time to get rid of weight cutting. I've had fighters, when I reshared the article, say, I always just thought it was part of the game. The game has got to change, and it can change for the betterment of the athletes if we can get rid of weight cutting and dehydration. UFC 225 will be moored in controversy for that main event, but there's still a lot more to talk about with the event. I mean, the trash talking of Colby Covington seemed to get under Rafael Dos Anjos' skin. Dos Anjos brilliantly attacking the body in the first round, but after that, the output kind of weighed. The non-stop pressure from Covington, a guy, again, another dude who cuts a lot of weight, able to take and walk through all of the punches from the smaller opponent, pressure with his boxing, add some leg kicks, shoot in for his takedowns. Colby Covington, as annoying as ever, but getting attention, and he now has the attention of Tyron Woodley, with UFC 227 looking like it's already booked. Henry Cejudo, Demetrius Johnson 2, Can Cejudo throw Mighty Mouse, the co-main event, the main event, Dillashaw, Garbrandt too. So a lot going on with that event. I think that paves its way for UFC 228 to be headlined by Covington and Tyrone Woodley, the welterweight title being unified. Holly Holm shows off a whole new layer to her game after getting stuck, almost getting hit with a big knee in the first round. Survives to out-wrestle, and use a heavy top game to dominate Megan Anderson. Anderson not able to put up with the grappling, wilted under the top pressure. A giant leap in the mixed martial arts game of Holly Holm. She's hit takedowns in practice. She said, why not try it? She tried it, did it. A heavy half guard, great ground and pound, a big win for the preacher's daughter. I think this opens up the way for Amanda Nunes versus Chris Cyborg. That is the big money fight. The UFC starving for big money fights. Nunes did acknowledge Holm, who in her post-fight comments and said she'd really like to have her bantamweight title back. Maybe Holm Nunes happens. Maybe Cyborg Nunes happens. Those three are kind of in that triangle mix. Only time will tell what the UFC does. 29-28 across the board, but the fans didn't agree. Taia Tuivasa got his nose broke, was able to land some of his own big strikes and combinations, takes the decision win over Andrei Arlovski. I thought going in, Arlovski's takedowns would make the difference. I felt that Arlovski, it seemed that he edged the first and third rounds, but Tuivasa gets the judge's nod. A heavyweight who is marketable, who's able to make people pay attention. The shoey, the smile, the infectious personality. That scores you big numbers with the UFC. Taia Tuivasa once again earning his pay-per-view slot. Possibly earning pink slips. The first fight on the pay-per-view card, Mike Jackson, CM Punk. Jackson just dominates Punk. Punk, not a martial artist. Picked this up late in life. Obviously got this opportunity because of the star element. Mike Jackson had him on his back, was just goofing around with the ground and pound, but it looked like CM Punk was trying, and that was kind of the disparaging factor. When they were on the feet, you saw the combinations, the clean striking from Jackson, who never really opened up, scared still of the counter and being made look like the fool. From Dana White's perspective, I think he'd just rather get rid of both guys, which I don't think is a bad idea at this point. Curtis Blades scores takedowns in all three rounds, and then from the guard in the third round, just the most devastating elbows we have ever seen. Paints Alistair Overeem red. The Reem is busted up from 6 big elbows. Curtis Blades, the win streak, has looked amazing since the setback to Francis Ngannou. Withstood eating a big uppercut and knee from Overeem in the first round, and from there on, it was razor blades in a system where we were just crowning champions in the Pro Fighters League, in possibly Bellator, definitely in the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix. Curtis Blades would be wrecking everybody. You would expect that Curtis Blades' performances recently have warranted a number one contendership for him to be the next in line to challenge the heavyweight champion. Well, with 226 coming up and Miocic versus Cormier, Brock Lesnar's name was brought up earlier. It was brought up for a reason. Currently, there's reports linking Brock Lesnar to John Jones. Maybe Blades is able to slide his way in there. But with Miocic being in Modelo commercials, his exposure on The Ultimate Fighter, Daniel Cormier on FS1, his exposure on The Ultimate Fighter, the star that John Jones is, the star that Brock Lesnar is, you kind of feel something brewing in that foursome right there. The fights will be made between those four, and everybody else is just on the outside looking in. Fabricio Verdum is unfortunately now caught up dealing with USADA. The unfortunate part is for Curtis Blades, because Blades now gets put into limbo. He's beat everybody ahead of him except for Francis Ngannou. Derek Lewis is going to happen. Curtis Blades may have to beat the winner of that fight just to keep his number one contendership, to be able to defend it. Maybe he even fights for Doom now that it looks like Olenek and Mark Hunt will be headlining the Russia card, depending on how everything does play out with USADA, or even Blades maybe having to tangle with the winner of Blagoy Ivanov versus Junior Dos Santos. Excuse me, had a brain fart there for a moment. Not to mention Alexander Volkov is supposedly there in waiting at 226. So I had skipped over somebody thinking that Blades is the automatic number one contender. It's somewhere between Blades and Volkov. But has either one of them garnered the attention and the publicity and the fame that would warrant a UFC title shot? That disgusting stuff that the UFC still kind of holds on a pedestal. Claudia Gadelha ekes out a split decision win over Carla Esparza. The takedowns and the top pressure. First round, Esparza does drop Gadelha, but Gadelha gets 2 takedowns, and it seemed like was on top for half the round. Steals that first round, found her takedowns. Gadelha gets a split decision victory, but you could see with the more powerful strikes being landed how there is an argument for Esparza winning. Mirsad Bektic, been high on that young man for a long time, picks up the biggest win of his career, defeating Ricardo Lamas. That's 2 straight for Lamas. The knockout loss to Emmett. Now this split decision, the wrestling was not there for the bully. He was not able to land heavy enough hands. Rashad Evans has seen better days. It only took 50 seconds to eat a knee. We'll try to look for a takedown from Anthony Smith. The follow-up punches were unnecessary. Rashad Evans definitely deserves, from what he's done with the UFC, a spot on that ESPN desk when they move over in 2019. Sergio Pettis gets the split decision over Joseph Benavidez. This one I scored the other way. I thought that Benavidez did enough in the second round and in the third round with his output to warrant a decision victory. Pettis, a very good first round. The knockdown had Benavidez in all sorts of trouble, but I thought after that really coasted. The numbers, the output, the activity was on Benavidez' side. A hard way after a year gone with an ACL injury, and to have a 6-fight win streak ended, a hard one to swallow from the Las Cruces native. Clay Guida got hurt. A stunningly beautiful jab by Charles Oliveira, forced into the takedown, and Oliveira with his patented guillotine gets the submission victory. I so didn't see that one coming. Dan Ige overwhelms Mike Santiago, hits him with some big shots, gets on top, and finishes the fight. Santiago, unfortunately, it was a great story, a big win streak to get on to Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, but I think that's the last we see of the Chicago native. And as we're backtracking through everything, go back to Friday night, you had LFA 42 in Branson, Missouri. There was LFA 42 on Friday night. Derek Krantz able to find his takedowns, win the scramble with efforts, big top pressure, and takes a split decision win over Cassius Kane. Kane had landed some big shots, had Krantz busted up and in all sorts of trouble, but kept giving up the takedowns. And even when he would get the upper hand in the grappling, would lose position, would slide out, would just lose the effort battle. Derek Krantz, a big win returning to LFA. You also had a huge knockout on the card. Josh Mars, a right hand, teeing off on then undefeated TJ Britton. A big finish. You can see that one up on my Instagram, Cage Minds MMA. Full results for UFC 225, LFA 42, and oh yeah, PFL 1 up at CageMinds.com. You had the Pro Fighters League with their debut event. Got started with Francimar Barbosa closing up Daniel Gilmore's left eye. Interesting scoring system. A first round finish gives you 6 points. So Barbosa right away catapults himself to the top of the leaderboards. That 6-point finish. You get a second round stoppage, you get 5. Into the third, it's 4. A decision is a 3-point victory, and a draw nets either fighter a point. Alessandro Almeida gets an armbar in the first round. Steven Seiler, a triangle in the first round. Kelvin Tiller, a first round knockout. You had Alex Nicholson with the main card highlight of the event after taking leg kicks throughout the first round. A beautiful flying knee. Again, I have the highlight on the Instagram page. Those guys all scoring big points. Same thing with Lance Palmer getting a rear naked choke. But Andre Harrison, the Bull, the main eventer, the former WSOF featherweight champion, finds himself after one night of this competition in fourth place, only picking up 3 points for his victory, as it was by the decision. So it's interesting when you have the point aspect. Can't wait to see how this PFL season continues to play out. Don't want to forget to mention big body shots landed in the post-lim that was on Facebook. Jack May made quick work of Josh Copeland. The Pro Fighters League taking this Thursday off. They'll be back the following week, paying close attention to how these tournaments go, to how these fighters look. I mean, I already got the first question. Will Daniel Galmore's eye be ready for the second fight? Will Jake Hune, who ate that huge flying knee from Alex Nicholson, will he be medically cleared by the time the heavyweights are supposed to be going again? It's stuff like this that makes heavyweight tournaments hard and makes a season format, this point totaling system, that much more interesting to keep up with. You break a toe, you break a hand, you get knocked out. Where does that place you in the medical protocol? How far are you out of action? Definitely, though, worth keeping an eye on. As far as stuff to keep an eye on for this week, don't forget now, we just had the PFL start up, and starting this week, it's back, is Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. Red Menace shut down right now for summer vacation. My last guest on Red Menace TV, which you can check out the last segment that I did at the Caged Minds Combat Sports News Facebook page, was with Wilfredo Santiago, the Brown Bomber, kicking off this 5-fight card, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. It's number 9. Or you could place it like that, it's episode 1 of season 2. Wilfredo against Kevin Holland. Also on there, you have Rico DeSchulo, a 9-1 record, taking on all of 2-0 Montel Jackson. Some prospect I imagine Jackson has to be getting this kind of recognition this quickly. DeSchulo, I've seen him, a tough guy, a multitude of skills. You have former football players, Austin Lane and Greg Hardy, 2 big heavyweights. Somebody's getting knocked out. We have to live with it. Greg Hardy is possibly going to be in the UFC. The UFC is already looking at him. The controversy sells, and that's what they're banking on. Sean Lawley taking on Chris Curtis in the welterweight division. Curtis, one of the main training partners of Sam Alvey, does great body work, very good knees, longtime CES welterweight champion. Glad to see him getting his opportunity on the big stage. And then the feature fight, Alonzo Menefiel had seen him many times with LFA, training out of Fortis MMA in Texas, an athletic freak, a heavy-handed individual with solid takedowns. The fight has the fight IQ caught up to his physical attributes. That is the question. It's going to be my first time seeing Deshaun Boatwright buck the 400-pound silverback, 3-0. I'm expecting devastation in an explosive way from these two individuals. Come Friday night, Access TV has fights. You have CES MMA 50 bantamweight title for CES is on the line. Staple of their promotion, Dennis Paiva, a ruthless striker, taking on another dynamic striker, the fast hands of Andre Ewell. Ewell, I think, is the faster guy. Paiva hits harder. Both guys are on big win streaks. Ewell, a 3-fight win streak, the last 2 by knockouts. The co-main event is in the middleweight division. Justin Sumner, who is 6-1, a 6-fight win streak, taking on UFC vet Ronald Stallings. Stallings returning to action for the first time in 2 years. Also interesting to note that Sumpner is scheduled past this fight to be a part of the 7th week of this season's installment of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, scheduled to be fighting current LFA interim middleweight champion Hurricane Ian Heinrich. Also look forward to on that CES MMA 50 card, LFA vet Mallory Martin, who's coming off a big submission win, taking on undefeated at 2-0 Maria Rivera. That's what you got this Friday on Access TV. Not to mention a battle of undefeateds at 125-pound Josh Ricci, 4-0 against Jose Lugo. Ricci, if you keep up with the New Mexico local scene here, had been announced as the opponent for Ricky Escobar at Jackson Wink Fight Night 3, but that quickly was canceled. I guess Ricci taking this closer to home opportunity with CES taking on Jose Lugo. Again, that's Friday night on Access TV. Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series and Access TV this week. A whole ton of boxing we had last weekend. Crawford picking up another title belt. You had Charlo defeating Trout. You had Cruz avenging Leo Santa Cruz avenging what happened against Abner Mares. And on the local scene, we're also thinking boxing, because next up, June 23rd, here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Route 66 Casino, you have Legacy Boxing Promotions, Route to Glory 2, Bad Blood, the long-awaited bout between Josh Pitbull Torres and Christian El Puma Cabral with a New Mexico State title on the line. The trilogy bout between Mad Max Heyman and Mad Mike Alderete, who both seem to be very mad at each other. Top prospects like Jason Sanchez, Aaron Angel Baby Perez, Christian the Punisher Castillo, Ronnie Baca the Mongoose, all expected to be on the card. Keep up with CageMinds.com. We're going to have interviews for that upcoming boxing event flying up. We already have main eventer Josh Pitbull Torres, his interview up. Also, it's time to start looking forward to June 30th. You have American Fight League with Southwest Brawl 8 at the Las Cruces Convention Center in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Jackson's MMA Series 25 at the Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino with that amazing main event of Harry Barahona against Jess Martinez. Jess Tafoya making his professional debut. All kinds of interviews will be flying up on CagedMinds.com here in the short-term future. Yeah, went through a lot this week. Weight cutting sucks. Let's all join in with one championship, vanquish weight cutting and dehydration from the sport. Let's see even better fights. What these martial artists can do on a full tank of gas before they deplete their entire bodies, literally past E, and then try to get it to a half tank. Let's see what these fighters can really do on a full tank of gas. This has been Cage Minds Uncensored. Thanks for listening.